Welcome to the podcast. It's the magical holidays. Time for Joe watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. Why, you might ask? Because it sounds like a crazy task to be watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. It'll be struggle, no I won't lie. By the halfway point I will lose my mind, but with your support I'm gonna be fine. So let's have a blast on this Christmas time. Join me now and let's find out about today's Christmas movie. Was it good or bad? Happy or sad? Is there another dead mom and dad? Let's get to it with no delay. It's your old pal Joe and he's happy to say welcome to Joe watches 60 Christmas movies in 60 days.
How's it going, everybody? It's me, it's your old pal Joe, and welcome to episode 41 of Joe Watches 60 Christmas Movies in 60 Days. Before we talk about today's movie, let's of course talk about our good friends over at Third Eye Comics. Third Eye Comics, if not for them, season 4 of this just mess of a project would not have existed. So let's thank them and or blame them. But in the meantime, if you need anything from the worlds of comics, graphic novels, gaming, music, movies, and even more, if you need anything from the world of more, then my friends, check them out. You can visit any one of their stores in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, or you can also visit them online at shop.thirdeyecomics.com. Third Eye Comics, they are your friends and mine, but they don't know you yet, maybe, but they are probably your friends too. Let's talk about today's movie, Christmas at the Amish Bakery. We open with an Amish and baking montage. Eventually we settle on a big city lady talking on the phone about big city business as she heads out from her home. We follow her arriving at the office and noticing the security guard is pulling another double shift. She gives him the coffee that she brought with her because he'll need it more than she will. He thanks her very much. This is Sarah, our main character, and we know that she's a good person because she gave the security guard some coffee. I like it when there's these little things that have no connection to the rest of the world of the movie, but they're just there to tell us about their character. Now, granted, that is anything a character does, but this just feels so out of place. This again, it's not like we have any other interactions with the security guard. This is the only scene in which the security guard is going to appear. So it feels so blatant, like, you know what? This Sarah, she's a good person. Next, we get Sarah looking through her mail and this is in her office, and receiving a Christmas card from her Amish sister, Rachel. It talks about her and her husband's new baby. Sarah is very touched by the card. Just then, Sarah's boss comes in and says Sarah needs to come up with a new cookbook idea immediately. And she goes on and on about how the bosses are worried about the drop in market share and they need to hurry up and improve things. And I'm sure there's like, if you want that promotion, you better come up with something, Sarah, because the bosses are just all over me to find something new. Whatever. Anyway, just then she notices the card from Sarah's sister on Sarah's desk, the boss does, and notices that the family is Amish. She goes, I didn't know you were Amish. She goes, well, my family's Amish. I'm not Amish. And she goes, well, that would be great. You should work with them to get a Amish cookbook. I'm sure you know all those recipes. And Sarah's like, actually, I don't know any of the recipes. I'm not much of a cook. So says, why don't you go home to visit your family and get the recipes from them? We find out that her sister and the family reside in Kentucky, and her sister runs a bakery. Cut to Sarah on the road, wiping off her makeup. When she arrives, a non-Amish man prevents her from entering the farm. No outsiders allowed, he says. She proves she's family, and he lets her in. Also, he has a no trespassing sign, and it's upside down. He's posting it, and he's hanging it on a wooden post that's in front of this gate. And he hangs it upside down, and she's like, your sign's upside down. And this guy is my least favorite character in this movie, and we'll talk more about him in a bit because he's literally one of the main characters of this movie. She walks in, and her sister is not nearly surprised enough to see her sister visiting. Because granted, she has no communication with her sister outside of sending mail, because her sister lives like 6 hours away. And so her sister just shows up out of the blue, and she's like, oh, Sarah, I didn't expect to see you. Sarah admitted she could have called first, or she couldn't have called first, and it doesn't seem like Rachel is very cool with her being there, but I think I was just reading too much into the scene. It's just a weird reaction from the character of her sister. Sarah implies that part of her reasoning was to see the new baby. Just then, Sarah's dad walks in. He's overcome with emotion and greets Sarah warmly. She says she'd like to stay through the holidays if that's okay. Her dad says she can stay as long as she'd like. She says she'd also like to help out in the bakery while she's there. They're less than okay with this because she's terrible in the kitchen. Eventually, though, they relent. We see Sarah getting ready for her first day in the bakery, putting on more traditional Amish wear. We find many pieces of equipment in the kitchen. Rachel explains that they can use them as long as they're powered by the energy that the farm creates. It's apparently their busiest time of the year just before Christmas. While in the kitchen, Sarah notices the guy who was preventing her from getting into the farm outside cutting firewood. She learns that he's Dean, a friend of their dad's who helps out around the farm. He's also a widower. He has an 8-year-old daughter named Zoe. Sarah finds out they no longer have a book of the recipes. I feel like my notes are kind of jumping around a bit. So then she's talking to her sister more. And she's like, so is there a book with all your bread recipes in there? All your baked good recipes? And her sister Rachel says, you know, we used to have one, but there was a fire in the kitchen, and we lost the book. And then Sarah's like, there was a fire? I had no idea. Why didn't you ever say anything? And Rachel says, well, we tended to only send you good news and not so much some of the bad news. Talk turns to Sarah's personal life. She's not dating anyone, and it doesn't look promising. She says it's mostly because she has incredibly high standards. She wants someone who works hard but isn't a workaholic, someone who can get through dinner without checking their phone, someone who wants to go on walks and read with her, who's just happy to spend time with her. Rachel laughs and says, you've described an Amish man. In walks Rachel's husband. He greets Sarah but then asks to speak to Rachel off to the side. He says something to her in Dutch and then leaves. Rachel returns and Sarah says, well, my Dutch may be rusty, but did he just say that the Finley family bakery is closed? Rachel confirms, yes, the Finley family bakery has closed, and they were a big source of revenue for us, so that could be a problem. So that's a bakery where they would ship their baked goods, and then that bakery would sell them. Sarah tries to talk more about the potential problem this could cause, but Rachel would rather not dwell on that problem right now. She's happy to be baking alongside her sister. Cut to Sarah writing recipes in a notepad. She meets Dean's daughter, Zoe. We find out Zoe is homeschooled. We find out Dean is also a renowned book illustrator. Sarah, being from the book world, is impressed and knows him from that. She goes, oh, wait, he's the illustrator of the series of books. It's like The Outstanding Adventures of Z. And we learn more about this book series throughout the movie. But apparently it's a very popular kids' book series that he was the illustrator of. And his late wife helped co-create and was the main writer of. Once learning that he was a renowned illustrator in the book world, she takes some coffee out to Dean and they make small talk. Dean asks if it's okay for Sarah to just come and go even though she's not Amish. Sarah explains that it's fine to visit as long as she's never made a vow to remain Amish and then broke it. She mentions his art for his books and he suddenly gets really awkward and excuses himself. But then they keep talking. He mentions how he's been trying to convince Sarah's dad and the other Amish leaders to open up the community to outsiders, but they've been resistant so far. He thinks people could learn a lot from the Amish. Sarah thinks that's a great idea. Cut to that night when Sarah mentions this idea to her family and unspools an entire plan where they could give tours and sell baked goods and have a open community day, if you will. The other families could even sell their wares in this day too. Her dad says he'll talk to the others about it. Cut to Sarah telling Dean that they've agreed on a trial run to let people in for the season. Dean is excited to hear this. We learn Zoe is homeschooled because she suffered from separation anxiety since her mom passed away. Cut to Sarah and Rachel planning items that they'll be baking for the big event. Talk comes to a beloved sourdough bread that they make, and Sarah gets the idea to sell portions of the family's sourdough starter to folks with instructions on how to bake it. Rachel likes this idea. We are just about 1/3 of the way through the movie, and it feels like the movie has turned into Sarah Has Good Ideas, the movie. We jump over to Zoe helping out Sarah's dad on the farm. Her dad picks her up. Her dad picks her up for singing practice. It's for a special kids concert that they have on the farm that she's been invited to participate in. And before she leaves, Zoe gives Sarah's dad a big hug and says she loves him. He seems taken aback by this gesture. Cut to Sarah and Rachel finding out that they need to deliver quilts to off-farm sellers. Sarah offers to help deliver them. She gets dressed in more outsider-friendly clothing and heads off. Dean catches her before she leaves and warns her the roads might be slick after the rain yesterday. She says, if you're so worried, you could come with me. He says he can't. He has other things he agreed to help with. He heads off and she makes a face like, maybe I want to smooch Dean. When she gets back, there was nothing about this that needed to be mentioned other than the fact that this was a task that the character had to do. When she gets back, her and Zoe do some fun stuff, including making snow cream. It's snow mixed with milk, sugar, and vanilla extract. Zoe loves it. Dean is there for that part and is really touched by how Sarah gets along with Zoe. Cut to Dean and Sarah chatting. She asks what happened to the book series he did before. Turns out he made them with his wife, and when she passed, he couldn't keep it going. He also has a whole story about how the popularity of the book was all-consuming and it became their entire life. In fact, the car accident that took his wife's life was caused in part because they were on the phone with their publisher at the time it happened. We find out that Sarah's dad was nearby, that the accident happened like close to the property, and that Sarah's dad was nearby and helped them post-accident. That's how they met Sarah's family. Cut to Sarah talking on the phone with her boss. Everyone is excited about the Amish baking book and they need more details and more content from the book immediately. Sarah says that she still needs to clear the idea with her family. Her boss says, wait, what have you been doing all of this time if you're not been clearing the idea with your family? Sarah says, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Cut to Sarah and Rachel in the bakery. Sarah finally brings up her big idea to make a recipe book out of all the Amish recipes. Rachel isn't into the idea, especially in partnering with a large corporation, which the Amish don't tend to like or approve of. Sarah asks if there was a way to boost profit and stay within community guidelines. Would you be open to it? Rachel says we would be open to it, and notice how Sarah has even more ideas. Then Sarah says, what if they published it and sold it on the farm and other bakeries that they sell to? What if they self-published it? What if they used old-fashioned printers even? What if they got Dean to do drawings since they can't take photos? We then cut from there to Sarah bringing up her idea to Dean. Dean says he's in, but he doesn't want to be paid. He has one condition. He gets to taste what he eats. Oh, Dean, you're such a knucklehead. Cut immediately to Dean drawing in the bakery. We also get a bit with Rachel's husband having trouble taking care of the new baby while Rachel and Sarah are out. The baby cries and the dad is a bit overwhelmed. He tells Dean that the baby only cries with him. He thinks maybe the baby doesn't like him. Dean, remember, he's a dad. He's the father of Zoe. Gives him some tips. The tips work. Sarah catches part of this interaction and is smitten with Dean. Cut to a family dinner. Dean is there and he and Sarah hold hands during prayer. After dinner, they go for a walk, and Sarah talks about why she left the family and the Amish culture. She had a thirst for the knowledge and wanted to learn everything she could. Dean holds her hand and says that he thinks what she's doing for her family is great. They share a moment. Now we watch Sarah type away on her typewriter, writing a description for one of the recipes. We get a montage which includes baking and posting signs about the big community day where everybody can come into the town and hang out and buy stuff. We jump ahead a bit, and now the recipe book is up to 100 pages. Dean comes into the bakery and shows off his illustrations. Dean asks if Sarah likes them. She says she loves them. Rachel watches all of this take place and pushes Sarah and Dean to head out to the printer together and maybe even get dinner. Dean says, well, I am a good cook. Sarah agrees to go to dinner with Dean, or to go over to his place for dinner. When Dean leaves the bakery, which is where all this took place, Sarah is now all nervous. Cut to after dinner. Dean and Sarah hang out. Sarah notices some of the books from the big popular book series are there, and they talk more about Dean's dream job. He'd like to do more books, but without the constrictions that they had before working for a large publisher. Eventually, Dean goes all in and talks about how much he likes Sarah. He thinks she's beautiful, kind, and funny. It's easy to be around her. She says it's easy to be around him, too. They start to kiss, but then Zoe barges in. Oh, Zoe. The next day, Rachel asks how dinner was. It was really nice. She goes on and on about how great Dean is and how he's so different from the guys that she meets in the city. Cut to Dean and Sarah sitting on the porch sharing a blanket. They're ready for the big community day the next day. They also talk about Sarah eventually leaving, and Dean says he'd like to take Zoe to meet her in the new year. Sarah would love to have him bring Zoe to visit next year. And now the books are done. They've been printed and bound, and they're all done. Everyone loves the way they look. Then we get a bit of a discussion between Dean and Sarah's dad. He gives Dean some advice that, while he's always welcome on the farm, he doesn't want them to be there because they're avoiding the world. Because there was this terrible accident that killed his wife, and they find some kind of peace at being so closely associated with the farm and the family of the farm. You get what I'm saying. Dean takes all this to heart. We get a montage of folks visiting the farm on the big community day. We get some alone time during the big event with Dean and Sarah. They both say how much they'd like to kiss one another, but they don't. I appreciated how honest they were with their feelings. Now it's nighttime, and it's time for the Christmas concert, which includes that kids' choir singing that will be happening at some point, but it doesn't really matter. But then someone arrives. It's Sarah's boss. She sees the books for sale and is excited that the book is done, but then Sarah explicitly says her family is not signing with her publisher. Her boss reads her the riot act, talking about how much money the family would be missing out on. Sarah says none of that matters to them. Sarah adds that if all this means that she doesn't have a job, so be it. Her boss agrees. She lets her go on the spot. Everyone hears this whole exchange and are now mad at Sarah for reasons that are kind of confusing. They say like, oh, you were just here to exploit your family. That's not right. Everyone leaves except Dean, who is very stern with... When I say everyone, I don't mean like the whole community day people. Just her family. Everyone leaves except Dean, who is very stern with her. Sarah promises that she would never betray her family. That she did go there seeking approval to make a book, but then let it go when Rachel said no. But then she saw an opportunity to help. Dean doesn't care. He storms out. The next morning, Sarah gets ready to leave. Her dad tells her that he knew how things happened and he knew that she would make the right decision. They'd like Sarah to stay. Sarah says, well, I'd like to stay too, but I still should probably go. Cut to her at the bakery saying goodbye to her niece, Zoe, and Rachel. She says she's so sorry. Rachel, though, is okay with everything. She, again, understands how it happened. The sisters make peace, but really there was no doubt that they would because there was really no conflict between them. We find out from Rachel that the community day worked really well and all the community leaders want to make it a regular thing. Rachel also brings up Dean and says she's sure he'll come around, he just needs some time. She heads off to go back to the big city, Sarah does. Cut over to Zoe and Dean being sad about what happened. Cut to Sarah being sad at home in the big city. Now it's Christmas Day. Dean and Zoe spend it with Sarah's family. Dean talks about how he's surprised everyone forgave Sarah so quickly. Sarah's dad talks about how it's a part of their culture and they choose to see the best in people and so on and so forth. This inspires Dean to want to deliver a present he got for Sarah before everything went to poop. Went to poop? What a term. Before everything went to poop. He arrives in the big city, Dean does, and gives the gift that he got for Sarah. It's a photo of Sarah and Rachel baking that he took. I guess it wasn't a photo. Maybe it was a drawing. It was probably a drawing he took of them. It was so well drawn that I assumed it had to be a photo. And I thought, well, there's nothing preventing him from taking their photo. But then there's all kinds of rules about using electronics, and there are rules about taking photos of Amish people. So... no, it had to be a drawing. Well, whatever. It was a drawing of Sarah and Rachel baking. Sarah is so touched by the drawing. Dean apologizes for being quite so mad. She apologizes for doing the wrong thing in the first place. He says he's not ready to lose what they had. He never thought he'd feel this way again, but he's falling in love with Sarah. She says she's falling in love with him. They kiss. They also head back to the farm because they were in the big city. And everyone is so happy that Sarah is back. Yay! The end. Christmas at the Amish Bakery. It was fine. There was an easy MVP in this. I really liked the work by Sarah's dad. I really felt he was almost cartoonishly official. Like he's the boss, he's the man, he's the leader of the community. But I also bought into him when he was saying things like Sarah can stay as long as she wants, that, this is what they do in their culture. I bought into it and felt like he was a very thoughtful person who was considering all sides of issues as he made these declarations. So he is the MVP in my eyes. You could do so much worse. And this was fine. I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, you got a good solid 6 here, which is not bad at all. Maybe even a low 7. It doesn't matter. I don't rate things like this, but I'm just trying to let you know that I liked this more than many other things that I've watched. So that's it. That's it for episode 41. Thank you for hanging out. Thanks for listening. I hope you had a good time, and I hope you're okay until the next time I talk to you, which will probably be tomorrow or today, depending on when I record the next episode. Goodbye.